reach out, help me reach out, help me reach out to touch your soul.
Greetings from Echoes of Tomorrow. I'm Marcia Huerta, and here with me is my husband, Jerry.
Hi, I'm Jerry.
Our study today is the seventh seal, Give Not Thine Heritage to Reproach. We are here to talk about the various interpretations of Revelation's prophecies, Preterism, Futurism / Dispensationalism, Historicism. They all have very different meanings of the message in that book and a different understanding of to whom the book was written. Here at Echoes of Tomorrow, we focus mainly on the historicist interpretation, and we've been expanding on that. So, Jerry, do you have your Bible?
Yes, I do.
That's it. What are the first 5 words of the Revelation?
The revelation of Jesus Christ.
Okay, so Jesus Christ is speaking to his church. In fact, he dictates 7 letters to John, and it appears that the letters were not intended for the Jewish nation, but rather for the nascent Christian church. Throughout the Revelation, Christ is revealing his present work in the heavenly sanctuary, and it's for the church. The book is actually divided into 2 parts. The first focuses on Christ's mediation to the church under the new covenant, which we'll be going over again today. The second describes the judgment of his adversaries down through the last days. Judgment commencing with, now hold on to your hats, those in the church. According to 1 Peter 4:17, judgment begins at the house of Yahweh. And we'll be talking about that situation today again soon. But before we go off exploring those areas, let's do a quick review. We're learning that Revelation is meant for the church, not for the unbelieving Jew, as preterists and futurists believe. We learned that Revelation is about Christ's work in heaven, his mediation. And how have we learned that? Well, past historicists have looked at the sanctuary rituals of the Old Testament and recognized that there is a tie-in between Christ's work in the heavens and those Old Testament ceremonial festivals. They were and are lessons for his creation in the plan of salvation through judgment. So we've been looking into this at depth, and I believe basing conclusions on Stephen N. Haskell's The Cross and the Shadow. The festivals or feast days are based on the Hebraic cultic calendar. It's evident that there is a pattern in those observances, a pattern to the 7 festivals that provide a template in understanding Christ's plan for mankind and explain exactly what he's doing right now. So after we gain a better understanding of the meanings behind the ritualistic festivals, we can then examine the relationship of Revelation with the ceremonial festival. And how we approach Revelation then is at the beginning. There are 7 letters to the churches, often called the 7 churches, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 plagues. Oh, we finally got to something in our title today, 7 seals. Those groups of 7 lay the pattern to reconcile with the ceremonial festivals. What we're doing is pattern detection work to decipher the revelation. And speaking of patterns and the such, Yahweh seems to appreciate nuance. There's quite a bit of symbolism in the book of Revelation as well. Symbols identify. And correct identification of entities is really important when we study Revelation or scriptures. Which brings us to another word in our title, remnant. In our last video, we sought to identify the woman, the remnant of the woman of Revelation 12. Earlier, we studied New Testament passages that revealed the symbolism of women in prophecy, of a woman in prophecy. A woman symbolizes the church. The woman in Revelation symbolizes the New Testament saints, the church. And something more, though. It says that Satan is at war with the remnant. So, Jerry, this doesn't sound good. Would you tell us more about the woman and her remnant?
Yeah, okay. The Revelation 12, we see a woman in heaven, and then she flees into the wilderness. And in the last verse 17, Satan is allowed to make war with the remnant of her seed. Hebrews chapter 12 says, we come to heavenly Jerusalem, the congregation of the firstborn. 2 Corinthians chapter 11 says that we are betrothed to Christ as a bride. And we are bidden to the wedding in this age in Matthew chapter 22. In Galatians, Jerusalem above represents the children of the promise. Paul identifies the Jews under circumcision with the children of the bondwoman, Hagar. But in Christ, there is neither circumcision or uncircumcision, but a new creature, who are the children of the promise, the free woman Sarah, according to Paul. Paul also identifies the children of the promise to the barren woman in Isaiah 54, who inherits the Gentiles. And it cannot be rightfully denied that the grafting of the Gentiles upon the olive tree was ordained in passages like Isaiah 54. Christ declared in Matthew chapter 12, verse 50, those who do the will of God stand as his mother and his siblings. The woman Paul describes as Jerusalem above in Galatians is the same woman in Revelation chapter 12, which affirms that her seed are all those in this age who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ, which exposes the views of the preterists and the dispensationalists as wood, hay, and stubble. Those who represent Hagar had their day of the Lord in 70 AD, which destroys dispensationalism. And the evidence that the day of the Lord pertains to the remnant of the saints at Christ's return destroys the preterist interpretation.
Well, the preterists and the futurists are interpreting the book of Revelation as pertaining to ancient Israel. They don't see the woman as the church. They see the woman as ancient Israel, right?
Well, yeah, the judgment in Revelation, according to the preterists, is on the church. Is on the old covenant people. The church fit into their doctrine in some fashion, but the real judgment is falling upon the old covenant people, the Old Testament people. They don't see a judgment upon the new covenant people, and certainly neither does dispensationalism.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that word remnant, the word itself means last group. So deducing then that Satan is at war with this last group of people, that we can conclude this is happening at the end of time. That Yahweh is allowing Satan to war against the final offspring of the woman, the church. And that sounds like judgment is occurring.
Yeah, judgment begins at the house of God.
Well, and judgments manifest in trials. And
it's a trial. It's
yeah.
a trial.
So there are trials before the final judgment.
No, the trials come before all Christians at all times, but there's the highest and the most highest judgment that comes at the end time, because the church has fallen in the end time. And that's what the New Testament says in many places, in many passages throughout the New Testament. There will be a great falling away or an apostasy. So we can conclude, and we're told that the day of the Lord pertains to us.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be looking for it, so it doesn't come upon us as a thief.
Right.
So the church will be judged at the end time. And in essence, the day of the Lord, when Christ returns, pertains to the church.
Well, yeah, and if we apply our template of the Old Testament ceremonial festivals, the last three festivals represent judgment. Specifically, the fall festivals between or of the Feast of Trumpets and the Day of Atonement. So if we apply the template of the Old Testament ceremonial festivals to this time, we are looking at the last three festivals, which were represented in judgment even in the ancient practice, specifically the fall festivals of the Feast of the Trumpets and the Day of Atonement, which represents the final day of the Lord, phase 2 of that. So
Correct.
we're seeing there's a relationship between the ceremonial festivals and the sequence of events as portrayed in the opening chapters of Revelation. But tell us how Revelation illustrates the pattern of the 7 festivals and the day of the Lord. I want to address that phrase too. The day of the Lord is spoken of in Joel.
Well, Revelation follows the pattern of the 7 festivals. In Revelation 1, we see Christ in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, clad with a long robe and a golden sash around his chest, which was foreshadowed by the high priest's daily mediation in the first compartment under the Old Covenant, where the menorah stood. 7 churches follow, and a heavenly throne scene in chapters 4 and 5, and then the 7 seals that illustrate judgment upon the saints, according to the 5th seal. The 7 seals open with images of the second compartment, the Day of Atonement. The release of the 7 angels with the 7 trumpets pronounce judgment on the wicked. Finally, the 7th and final trumpet announces the harvest, the resurrection and the reward of the saints, foreshadowed by Sukkot or the Feast of Tabernacles. Progression from the first compartment into the second in Revelation was foreshadowed by the yearly obligations of the priesthood in the Mosaic covenant. The shift of the judgment from the saints to the wicked at the opening of the 7th seals follows the pattern of the day of the Lord. Judgment must begin at the house of God before it shifts to the wicked. First Peter, this is what we see, as you said, in 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 17, and as it was said throughout the Old Testament by the prophets. The 7th seal commences the second part of the day of the Lord, judgment upon the wicked. The 4 horsemen judge the saints. This confirms the 7 seals follow the pattern of the day of the Lord, foreshadowed by the fall festivals of Yom Teruah and Yom Kippur. We have cited a number of biblical theologians and scriptural passages to show that the Feast of the Trumpets and the Day of Atonement represent the 2 parts of the Day of the Lord, supported by the development of the imagery in Revelation chapters 1 through 11. This pattern is even more recognizable when one grasps the prophetic nature of the 7 churches, 7 eras, as foreshadowed by the 7 months between the spring and fall festivals.
Right. Okay. So I made charts. Jerry doesn't appreciate my genius with teaching tools. So I'm going to share with you a visual aid of the sequence of events and multiple extrapolations of Revelation's prophecy. Revelation begins with the 7 letters to the churches, or 7 churches, as we said, and both provide exhortations and admonitions to the 7 Christian churches in Asia Minor. In another capacity, however, those same exhortations and admonitions can be applied universally to any church. And from yet another perspective, the churches also represent historical church eras of the last 2,000 years. Further elucidation comes when we apply, once again, the template of the ceremonial festivals. The 7 months, just like Jerry said, between the spring and fall festivals foreshadow the 7-month church eras. So I hope you can see this. Let's see. We start with the 7 letters to the churches. We focus on the warnings. We have to take heed to the warnings to the churches. At the seventh church, We have the feast of the festival of the trumpets, according to the ceremonial template. And at the seventh church, we go to open the first of the seven seals. The next is the seven
So
seals.
this year,
But with the seals, we are focusing on judgment. In keeping with 1 Peter 4:17, the first warnings of impending judgment in the days of the church are to the church, in the last days are to the church. This is also the first phase of the day of the Lord, which we determine as a two-phase event when Jewel is studied. So at the seventh church era, it's congruent with the fulfillment of the festivals of the trumpets, and it goes to the first seal. The first seal release is about judgment on the church. The first four release the horsemen of judgment. The fifth seal is an anomaly, as it is talking about the prayers of the saints. When we use the template of the ceremonial festivals, we can see it is congruent. The seven seals are congruent with the day of the Lord. Phase 1, judgment on the church. Are you following? At the seventh seal, then the first trumpet is opened. Okay.
next time I'll make you some charts.
What's that?
Next time I'll make you some charts.
I'm happy with the Marsu slides. All right, so the seven trumpets now. Judgment turns from Yahweh's people to the wicked. And the template that coincides with the trumpets is on the seventh trumpet, the Feast of the Trumpets. Finally, on the seventh trumpet, we have the Day of Atonement, the final judgment, which is the punishment, full punishment on the wicked with the seven plagues, and represents the second phase of the day of the Lord. All right, so our finds so far. Revelation is for the church. The Hebrew cultic calendar of the ceremonial festivals express the plan of salvation through judgment, plan of salvation through judgment. And it is the template to express the same plan of salvation through judgment under the new covenant that reveals Christ's activity in heavenly places. Jerry has been talking about what part the remnant has in this scenario. The remnant of Revelation 12's women are the last children of promise who are presently under judgment. We need to understand what is at stake for his people. Yahweh's people are promise and inheritance. But what is the inheritance or heritage, and how is it being threatened right now? Jerry's going to tell us more.
Welcome once again to Echoes of Tomorrow. And today's study, again, is the seventh seal, Give Not Thy Heritage to Reproach. We reveal that the four horsemen, the opening seals, represent judgment on God's people, as made clear by the martyrs of the fifth seal. They want their blood avenged upon those who dwell on earth, which refers to the rider of the red horse, who takes peace from the earth so that they should slay one another. They are told that the last of their brethren must perish in the same manner and must wait a little season before God judges those who shed their blood. As revealed, God begins to judge those who shed their blood in the seventh seal, at the release of the angels with the seven trumpets, which reveals the little season has passed. Again, this fits the two-part pattern of the day of the Lord. Judgment begins with God's people, and then it shifts to those who refuse to obey him at Christ's return. Such evidence supports seven seals represent the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord also arrives as a thief in the night, which is what the church in Sardis is warned if they fail to repent. In Revelation chapter 3, verses 1 through 3, we read, And unto the angel of the church in Sardis write, These things saith he that hath the seven spirits of God, and the seven stars. I know thy works, that thou hast a name, that thou livest, and art dead. Be watchful and strengthen the things which remain, that are ready to die, for I have not found thy works perfect before God. Remember, therefore, how thou hast received and heard, and hold fast and repent. If therefore thou shalt not watch, I will come on thee as a thief, and thou shalt not know what hour I will come upon thee. According to 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 2 and 4, 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 10, and Revelation chapter 16, verse 15, the warning that Christ would fall upon Sardis as a thief is symbolic of the day of the Lord. Judgment, which is no longer uncertain, but imminent in the next letter to the church of Philadelphia. Again, citing from Revelation chapter 3, we read, and to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, these things saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that hath the key of David, he that openeth that no man shutteth, and shutteth that no man openeth. And then it continues to verse 10, because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world, and try them that dwell on the earth. The open door cited in the letter to Philadelphia reappears in the following chapter, where Christ instructs John to witness what is to come. The martyrs' petitions in the fifth seal confirm that the four horsemen represent the judgment or trial forewarned in the eras of Sardis and Philadelphia. As noted earlier, the pattern in Revelation is that the seven seals begin with the seventh church era, Laodicea, and the phenomena of the seven trumpets begin at the seventh seal, as affirmed in Revelation chapter 8. Finally, the harvest begins with the seventh trumpet, as confirmed in Revelation chapter 11, verses 15 through 18. But God does not punish or judge his people because they are doing his will. Punishment is a result of disobedience. In 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 12 and 13, we read, Beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened unto you. But rejoice inasmuch as ye are partakers of Christ's sufferings, that when his glory shall be revealed, ye may be glad also with exceeding joy. God uses trials for our correction. As Hebrew chapter 12, verse 10 states, God disciplines us for our good, for our own good. Such evidence affirms God allows Satan to attack the remnant, to discipline them. What were the problems during the Sardis era that promoted the warning of Christ to come, that he was going to come as a thief in the night? Dispensationalist Clarence Larkin held the era as the Reformation, and the struggle became one of political liberty rather than a purely religious movement. While accurate, the historicists hold a keener insight. The magisterial Protestants imbibed the philosophy of the Enlightenment, rationalism, the idea that in secondary causes, the world functioned independently of God, which is deism. Through the politically established church, the feudal society suppressed the acquisitive tendencies to seek personal gain, wealth, or control at the expense of others through the use of property. The Protestants swept away the role of the church in these matters. The 20th century Protestant economic historian Richard H. Tawney wrote about this change in the legal effects of the Protestant Reformation. Citing from Tawney, we read, the state could not encroach upon these rights, for the state existed for their maintenance. They determined the relation of classes, for the most obvious and fundamental of all rights was property. Property absolute and unconditional. and those who possessed it were regarded as the natural governors of those who did not. Society arose from their exercise through tie contracts of individual with individual. Once again, from Tawney and his book, The Acquisitive Society. While the feudal society was noted for its subdual of the merchants, the change in economic policies allowed them to rise and establish tremendous power, especially through the Roman merchant device of corporations. 18th century Methodist minister John Wesley commented on the ramifications of the increase of wealth of the nations. He held that the virtues of Christianity necessarily produce both industry and frugality, and these cannot but produce riches. But as riches increase, so will pride, anger, and the love of the world in all its branches. Once again, from John Wesley's sermons, Thoughts on Methodism. Wesley's sermon prophesied the Laodicean era, our modern market-driven society. Yet not all the Protestants went along with the absolute impression of property rights and held that they had a duty to the common good. God says there were those in Sardis that had not defiled the garments. Once again, reading from Revelation chapter 3, verses 4 and 5. Thou hast a few names even in Sardis which have not defiled their garments, and they shall walk with me in white, for they are worthy. He that overcometh, the same shall be clothed in white raiment. And I will not blot out his name out of the book of life, but I will confess his name before my Father, before his angels, and before his angels. These Protestants led to a rise of freeholders or yeomen who held the main means of production for a brief time before the merchants gained ascendancy with the kings of the earth. They epitomized the Philadelphian era. Again, Tawney comments that the end of the feudal age led to the rise of this property class of freeholders. Quote, whatever the future may contain, the past has shown no more excellent social order than that in which the mass of the people were the masters of the holdings with which they plowed and the tools with which they worked, and could boast with the English freeholder that it is a quietness to a man's mind to live upon his own and to know his heir certain. Once again, from R.H. Tawney in The Acquisitive Society. What Tawney is alluding to is the heritage of the saints. While we have a part of that heritage when we live godly lives, Satan is always ready to steal it from us by making us sin. When we sin, God is ready to discipline us, which is the object of the trial of the day of the Lord. The freeholders were instrumental in the civil war against Charles I and established a republic that replaced the monarchy. The freeholders began to diminish with the reestablishment of the monarchy and the rise of the Industrial Revolution. In America, the freeholders or yeomen established a republic in which duties for the common good accompanied property rights. Still, they contended for power in the country with the emerging Lockean liberalism. Republican virtue promoted a patriarchal society in which the government guided the economy, while Lockean liberals held to individualism and free trade with little or no government interference. While vestiges of republicanism lasted until the end of the 19th century, the liberal agenda endured. Lockean liberalism led to a market-driven society that diminished or assailed the patriarchal society as well as the nuclear family. God has allowed Satan to make war with the remnant of the woman's seed in Revelation chapter 12. That war is being waged now. In that war, Satan's intent is to destroy our heritage by making us sin. And our heritage is eaten away when we become the tail and the rich merchants become the head, evidenced in that we are borrowing $93,000 every second to pay the country's debt, which is what Congressman David Schwenkert revealed on the House floor. And our heritage is threatened by the Democratic Socialists of America, who call for dismantling the racist nuclear family. Our heritage is threatened when Satan weakens the nations by the use of immigration to bring down countries. Political commentator George A. reveals that foreigners attain citizenship for their children in the U.S. with rights to return after years of indoctrination in their native lands and to run for government positions in this country. There are a multitude of ways Satan is destroying the heritage of the saints. We have just named a few. We encourage our viewers to post the ways they see Satan destroy the heritage of the saints. And that now, even more than ever, our prayers should be, spare thy people, O Lord, and give not thy heritage to reproach, that the heathen should rule over them. Wherefore should they say among the people, where is their God? We have a couple of books. My wife and I have a couple of books that, if you're interested, we would like to share them with you. Just go on to Amazon.com and they're available there. Thy Kingdom Come, Reevaluating the Historicist Interpretation of Revelation is our first book. And the second book is The Four Horsemen and the Merchants of Revelation. And when I ask you once again, or plead with you, to subscribe, like, and share. And please add some comments.